Let's talk about the Front Range Passenger Rail. This is a rail network that is planned to be built across the Colorado Front Range, extending from Cheyenne, Wyoming, all the way down to Pueblo, although some plans put the end stop at Colorado Springs or Fort Collins because nothing is actually finalized. However, I've been reading up about it recently, and there's been a lot of negative press around this concept, as well as I think just a lot of either complete transit ineptitude or just plain incompetence, because this would easily be a huge improvement to transit across Colorado as well as Wyoming, because almost everyone in the state of Colorado lives along this corridor. Why is there not already a train here? I genuinely have no idea. This is one of those cases where the positives far outweigh the drawbacks, but there's still a lot of doubt or belief that this line would be a waste of money or time, which is just not true. Like this article, where some quote unquote rail expert says that a front range passenger train would be a costly disaster. And then they cite the cost. What do you think the real cost of the Front Range project will be? $100 million per mile. Indonesia just opened one and it cost $89 million a mile. If a developing country with low wages can't spend less than California, what do you think Colorado's going to do? Okay, well, first, Colorado is still a cheaper state for the time being than California to build stuff. And second, the Indonesian train that they were talking about is this, a high-speed rail network that actually is the second fastest commercially operating rail network in the world, going at 260 miles per hour, runs 48 daily trips, and in order to build it, they had to build an entirely new dedicated rail network just to accommodate these high speeds. Last I checked, we're not planning on doing that in Colorado. The Colorado Front Range Rail is going to use Amtrak trains or Amtrak equivalent along rail networks that already exist, but are just currently exclusively used for cargo and commercial trains. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but I think building an entirely new elevated high-speed super rail is a bit more expensive than building trains on rails that are already built. Estimates to build the Front Range project vary wildly, but I've seen figures as high as $12 billion. Does this number seem realistic? There's no way. You're probably looking at close to $20 billion. For what? What are we paying $20 billion for? Maybe it's because these tracks are owned by a private company and the state has to rent them, essentially, to run passenger trains down them, which is the dumbest thing on the planet. And I would be in full support of the state nationalizing the ownership of its rail network so that these companies can't swindle us out of an actually usable rail line. The rail's already been built. We just need to run the trains down it. Of course it's not going to cost $100 million a mile. Or this one, Greeley City Council agrees Front Range Passenger Rail Project is a bad deal for Greeley taxpayers. Now, to be fair, Greeley is not usually planned to be along the Front Range corridor. I can't justify raising taxes for folks who have to drive 35 minutes to the closest train stop, Councilmember Tommy Butler said. The thing that these people don't realize is that even though the train may not be extremely close right now, that doesn't mean that it's useless. And that doesn't mean that it can't be extended or expanded in order to create more connections. The Front Range Rail project may not really help out Greeley as much, but it would help out Loveland, Longmont, Fort Collins, and all these other towns that are right along its line. And just because the Front Range Rail doesn't go all the way into Greeley doesn't mean that in the future a rail extension like this couldn't be built out to Greeley, or at least a BRT or another type of feeder route. These are all expansions that would come with time, but you need to have the central line first. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that if built correctly, this line will not cost several $billion to construct when most of the infrastructure is already there. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe some of the rail tracks will need some work. They are not really in the best shape, but definitely not even comparable to building a whole new high-speed rail network. So that Indonesia equivalency is just false information. So let's get into all the reasons why the Front Range passenger rail would actually be great for the state of Colorado, and Wyoming, I guess it does go to Cheyenne. Well, the first and most obvious reason is that over 4.5 million people live along this corridor. That's more than many countries, including some that have far better public transit infrastructure than we do. Plus, it doesn't need to be a high-speed rail line for it to be useful. If it can be at least just as fast as driving between these cities, then people would use it. And by the way, this is totally possible. Google says that it takes 3 hours 37 minutes to go from Pueblo up to Cheyenne. And I'd have a hard time believing that, because that's 3 hours 37 minutes in perfect traffic, which you will never get on the I-25 corridor through Denver. Either way, 3 hours 37 minutes, which would totally be possible for the train to do in pretty much the same amount of time. California Zephyr trains usually go around 55 miles an hour, but can go a max of 79. If they went just literally their average speed, they would be able to match driving times from Pueblo to Cheyenne. Plus, the train would stop in a lot of towns right in the downtown, which would encourage a lot of dense mixed-use development around the site. And it would also stop in several college towns. It could even have a stop right here, right next to Colorado State University. So you could get college students onto this train pretty easily. And the stops being in the center of even smaller towns like this could actually help revitalize a lot of these smaller Front Range towns and bring the whole area kind of together as this one cohesive network. And look at this line that I drew. This entire network already exists. This is all on existing rails. Almost 240 miles of what I think is just currently BNSF cargo rail that runs from Cheyenne all the way down along the Front Range to Pueblo. It would literally be as easy as getting some trains to run this route. I think once per hour would be a really good schedule. 24 trains per day is really not that bad, and definitely well within our state's transit budget. Many Coloradans complain about traffic all the time, yet also believe that public transit is useless, which is contradictory. This rail corridor would get a lot of people out of cars and onto the train, which would free up a lot of traffic space on the interstates, as well as other roads connecting these cities. And that's about all I have for today. I definitely didn't cover everything, but my main point is that the Front Range passenger rail is a great idea and should be built. So if you're in the state of Colorado, throw some support its way. And anyway, till the next time, bye.